Good evening. On behalf of the commissioners and staff, I would like to welcome you to the October 24th City of Roseville Public Utilities Commission meeting. This 7-member commission is responsible for studying and advising the City Council regarding all utilities owned or operated by the city, including electric, water, wastewater, and solid waste. The Public Utilities Commission advises the City Council regarding planning, rates, public information, cable television franchises, and other matters relating to such enterprises, and may also hear citizen complaints as to operational rates. The Public Utilities Commission also advises the City Council regarding the activities of such joint power agencies as the city may be a member of, or which relate to such utility enterprises. At this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please put your electronic devices on silent. Pam, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bilski?
Here.
Commissioner DeLacy?
Here.
Commissioner DeMarkey has an excused absence. Commissioner Knox?
Here.
Commissioner Maish?
You.
Commissioner Maish?
Here.
Commissioner Springer? Here. And Chair Webb?
Here. Commissioner Bielski, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item on our agenda is public comments. Item number 4. This item is for anyone who would like to address the commission on any item that's not on tonight's agenda. When addressing the commission, please state your first and last name for the record. Not seeing any public comment, I'd like to move to our next item. It is the approval of the minutes. I'd like to request a motion to approve the September 26th meeting minutes. Who would like to make a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed or abstentions? That passes. Next on our agenda is our requests and presentations. First up is the Environmental Utilities Monthly Update. Tonight's report is by our Environmental Utilities Assistant Director, Sean Bigley. He'll be summarizing the monthly status of our environmental utilities activities. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair Webb and members of the Public Utilities Commission. I'm Sean Bigley. I'm an Assistant Director with the Environmental Utilities Department. So I have 3 updates for you tonight. The first update has to do with our current well drilling of 2 new ASR wells. These new ASR wells are located roughly in the Misty Woods neighborhood, and then the second well is located in the Campus Oaks area, which is off of Blue Oaks. Essentially, the drilling activity was completed last week, and the well driller has demobilized from those sites. We have conducted 12-hour pump testing at both of the wells, and current data that's come back from that exercise is that the wells appear to be actually really good sites with respect to potential extraction and recharge capacity. So just to kind of share some of those initial results. So on the Campus Oaks well, we're looking at an extraction, and just to give you a little baseline, so typically what we see is about 1,800 gallons per minute in terms of extraction from a groundwater well. That's typically the assumption we make in design. And then in terms of recharge, it's 1,400 gallons per minute is typically what we assume in design of ASR wells. So as an example, Campus Oaks, right now what we're looking at is about 2,200 gallons per minute in terms of extraction, so much higher than we would typically see. And then from a recharge perspective, 1,700 gallons per minute, which is also higher than we would typically see at a groundwater well site. Even better is the Misty Woods site. Roughly for extraction purposes, we're estimating roughly a design point at about 2,500 gallons per minute for extraction at that site. And then in terms of recharge capacity, it's roughly about 2,000 gallons per minute, more or less. And so that's really good news with respect to the next sort of steps in the process. So what we're looking kind of moving forward is actual design of the top side of those facilities. And that's going to occur starting next month for about a 6-month period. So from November 2023 through about May 2024, we're going to complete the design process. Contracting is going to occur roughly between the months of June through August of 2024. And then actual construction is projected to begin September of 2024, and that'll last for about a year until we're complete. So anyway, so we're making really good progress on those two groundwater sites. These groundwater sites were also the sites that recently received funding from the Department of Water Resources, as well as the California Natural Resources Agency. City of Roseville received $8 million to help partially fund those two well sites. So good progress there. Moving on to the second topic, I just wanted to kind of make you aware of I think a pretty neat event coming up. It's kind of a win-win for the community. This event's called Succulents for Soups. And essentially what it is, it's a water-wise food drive that we're going to be working with. And this is in partnership with Green Acres Nursery and Supply. And so the way this works is that customers from November 28th through December 9th can essentially donate non-perishable canned food. This is going to be at the Utility Exploration Center. That would occur from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Apparently, the exception is December 3rd and 4th. I think the UEC is closed during that time. But again, November 28th through December 9th is the time frame. And in exchange for that donation of non-perishable food, the customer would receive one free succulent plant. And so the donated food ultimately will go to Roseville St. Vincent de Paul Society, which, as you all are probably quite aware of, they work hard to battle hunger and food insecurity here in the community. And again, this is a partnership with Green Acres Nursery and Supply. And so just a really great opportunity to get wins both in the sort of hunger space and trying to battle that locally, as well as really encouraging folks to embrace water efficient practices by utilizing plants like succulents. The last update that I'll provide is our Adopt a Creek activities. So as you know, under environmental utilities, we do have a stormwater program function. And so as part of that, we work to coordinate a periodic Adopt a Creek set of cleanup events. So our first event actually occurred on Saturday, October 14th, and we had about 25 volunteers in the community. And the cleanup was along the Secret Ravine area. This was behind the UA Theater. We also have two additional events that are coming up. One is on Saturday, October 28th. This will occur at Sockstag-Royer Park area. And finally, the third and last event will be Saturday, November 11th, and this will be at Olympus Point Park. And if members of the community are interested in signing up for these events, you can simply Google Roseville Adopt a Creek. When you Google it, there will be an Eventbrite link there that you can click, and you can sign up for those events if you want to participate in cleaning up our local creeks. So with that, that's all I've got for tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any commissioners have questions for Sean at this time? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Well, thank you for your update, Sean. The next item on our agenda is from the Roseville Environmental Utilities. It is our legislative and regulatory update. This presentation is being given to us by our government relations representative, Sarah Boudreau, and she's giving us our year-end overview for the priority water, wastewater, and waste services legislation and regulatory issues that were addressed in 2023. Thank you for your report.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Sarah Boudreau with the Environmental Utilities Department. Tonight, I'll be providing you with an overview of issues that we worked on throughout this session, which ended on September 14th. This session, our environmental utilities staff tracked over 250 bills and actively engaged on 39 measures. Some of these tracked bills are now 2-year bills, some were amended to move Roseville to watch positions, and others were completely amended and no longer apply to our utilities. This evening, I will cover several bills EU worked on this year dealing with drought, operational constraints, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, which I'll refer to as PFAS, extended producer responsibility, and water rights. Additionally, I'll give a brief overview of the proposed regulations to making conservation a California way of life, and I will share an update on our federal appropriations request which we previously brought to the Commission back in May. To start us off, we saw a number of bills related to environmental protection and water conservation in California this session. One of the most notable is AB 1572 by Assemblymember Friedman, which would prohibit the use of potable water to irrigate non-functional turf at commercial, industrial, and institutional properties beginning in 2027. Non-functional turf is the grass that you see in streets and parking lots, whereas functional turf is the grass that you see at homes and golf courses. When this bill was first introduced, Roseville had concerns as the bill did not take into consideration the use of water for the health of trees and other perennial non-turf plantings. This was our top priority, especially as the city continues to expand. We want to ensure the protection of existing landscapes and trees in order to combat heat island effects as we experience a hotter, drier climate. Staff participated in work group meetings with our statewide trade associations and the author's office, and we were able to successfully achieve amendments that addressed Roseville's concerns. These amendments made it so the bill no longer applies to multifamily or municipal properties, and there is now language that is protective of trees and other non-turf plantings. And then there's an update to this slide. Governor Newsom has signed AB 1572 into law. This next bill relates to operational constraints as SB 3 by Senator Dodd expands the Water Shutoff Protection Act, which was established with the passage of SB 998 in 2018. This bill now makes it so that Roseville would be prohibited from shutting off a water service for non-payment, regardless of if the customer was able to pay or not. Under current law, water systems must create a policy with strict notification requirements to customers, and there are limits in the ability to discontinue water service for non-payment for customers who are under-resourced or medically vulnerable. Additionally, Roseville tries to work with our customers who are past due so that we can discuss a path forward, whether that be through payment plans or other alternative solutions. This bill also expands the authority of the Attorney General to take action against water systems that are found to be violating this law. This is concerning because the restitution authority is overly broad and extends to real and personal property, which water agencies do not acquire real property. We also have concerns with potential financial ramifications of SB 3, as it is possible that we could see significant increases in the number of unpaid bills like we witnessed during the pandemic. And just like the last slide, there's an update to this slide as Governor Newsom signed this into law. The next measure is AB 727 by Assemblymember Weber. This bill would prohibit the use of PFAS in various cleaning products and floor sealers. Some examples would include air fresheners, car cleaning products, home cleaning products, soaps, detergents, and more. Roseville is supportive of measures that remove PFAS from our everyday products, especially because they have the potential to enter into the city's wastewater stream and can become costly and impossible to remove in its entirety. Unfortunately, Governor Newsom vetoed AB 727 due to a lack of regulatory oversight to properly implement the restrictions within the bill. Instead, he called on the Department of Toxic Substances Control to work with the legislature to find alternative solutions that protect consumers and effectively address public health and environmental concerns. AB 2 by Assemblymember Ward relates to extended producer responsibility. This bill would have required certain retailers to collect a recycling fee from a consumer who is buying a covered solar panel. Additionally, starting in October of 2026, this bill would have required CalRecycle to establish a solar panel recycling fee based on regulatory costs. Lastly, starting in 2028, any solar panels not customer-owned would have had to create a plan for the end of its useful life, which would have included who is responsible for managing it and how it will be recycled, refurbished, or reused. California is pushing for the use of more solar power, as seen with the requirement of all new homes being built to have solar panels. Currently, there's no plan in place to address the disposal or recycling of solar panels at the end of their useful life. AB 2 was made into a 2-year bill, which will allow the author's office and other interested parties an opportunity to negotiate further. And we're hopeful to see this measure come back up again in January. This session, we saw multiple water rights legislation come forward. The ones I will discuss today were the most prominent within the water community. Although Roseville doesn't have its own water rights, the Placer County Water Agency, or PCWA, does have water rights. Roseville contracts with PCWA for a portion of our water, so Roseville coordinated our efforts on these measures. If PCWA's water rights were challenged, it could cause issues with Roseville's ability to receive water supply from them. The first bill, AB 460 by Assemblymember Bauer-Cahan, would enhance the ability of the State Water Board to issue interim relief orders in order to protect water rights and deter unlawful conduct. While the intent of the bill was to address illegal diversions, this measure would have gone well beyond that intent and would have limited judicial review. AB 460 was made into a 2-year bill to allow water agencies and the author's office to work out the concerns. The next bill, AB 1337 by Assemblymember Wicks, would have greatly expanded the Water Board's ability to adopt regulations through orders curtailing the diversion or use of water by pre-1914 water rights holders. For background, under California's water rights system, the most common types of water rights are riparian, pre-1914 appropriative, and post-19 appropriative. Similar to AB 460, Roseville opposed AB 1337 for concerns with PCWA's pre-1914 water rights. AB 1337 was also made into a 2-year bill to allow time for further negotiations. And then finally, SB 389 by Senator Allen authorizes the State Water Board to investigate and determine whether a water right is valid or not. This bill also authorizes the board to issue an information order to aid in investigation and could deem anything not authorized as a trespass. Under current law, water rights holders measure the water they divert and report that information to the Division of Water Rights. This bill is trying to address a report by the Planning and Conservation League, which stated that the Water Board doesn't have the tools to properly investigate and determine whether a water right claims are inflated or represent the amounts the claims have the right to divert and use. Throughout this session, our statewide trade associations worked with Senator Allen's office to greatly rein in the Water Board's authority and place guardrails and protections for water rights holders. With these amendments, Roseville was able to move from an opposed position to a neutral position, and SB 389 was signed by the governor. On the regulatory front, on August 18, 2023, the State Water Board initiated the rulemaking process to making conservation a California way of life. These draft regulations are the result of SB 606 and AB 1668, which passed in 2018. These bills require the Water Board, in consultation with DWR, to develop regulations that implement the intent of those conservation legislation. As proposed, these regulations will impose a new way of managing urban water use in California. Through this regulatory framework, Roseville will have its own individualized water use objective based on the city's service area. The State Water Board held their first public workshop on October 4th, where Mayor Holdeshelt had an opportunity to provide public comments on behalf of Roseville, and staff recently submitted a detailed comment letter to the board on October 17th, outlining our concerns with the proposed regulations. We have concerns that the regulations go beyond what was originally negotiated and authorized in statute. One example is excessive authority delegated to the State Water Board. Additionally, the proposed regulations do not adequately recognize the investments of local communities in recycled water in decision-making. And finally, we have concerns over the potential loss of our vital tree canopies in existing landscapes. The final regulations are expected to be adopted in the next 12 months. This next slide shows the formula that encompasses what Roseville's water use objective will be comprised of under the proposed regulations. Water agencies will have to calculate our own budget, not individual customers. The implementing statute allowed for flexibility within each of these elements to choose where we focus our resources and attention. Within the water use objective, there are 2 fixed elements. The first is residential indoor, which was set in statute with the passage of SB 1157 from 2022. Under this, suppliers are currently required to meet 55 gallons per capita daily, or GPCD. and then it reduces to 47 GPCD in 2025, and then 42 GPCD in 2030. The second fixed element is the water loss regulation, which was the result of SB 555 from 2015. Under this, Roseville will have to reduce our current water loss by 25%. The additional components of the regulation for Roseville's water use objective is comprised of residential outdoor and commercial, industrial, and institutional outdoor. There are also variances that agencies can apply for if they meet the specific criteria. And lastly, agencies may qualify for a bonus incentive if they do potable reuse. The State Water Board put out a tool where we can see our conservation targets through 2035. Without any current adjustments, the online tool shows that EU will not need to face any reductions to meet the 2025 targets. However, by 2030, Roseville will need to see a 9% reduction in its water use, and by 2035, the city will need to reduce its water use by 13% overall. The final issue I have for you tonight is an update on our 2 community project federal funding requests that we mentioned in the May meeting. Unfortunately, we were not successful in obtaining funding for either of these projects through the appropriations process this year. Before we can seek an appropriation for the joint raw water project, we need to complete a project partnership agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers and a letter report. Then we will be able to seek an appropriation from the current authorization of $21 million in federal funds for this project. We are working with our federal lobbyists to discuss other alternatives in federal funding to offset ratepayer costs for the Barton Road Solar Array and Battery Backup Project. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have questions from, let's start here.
So this is a softball question. What's the usable life of a solar panel?
I just read it, and do you know what it is?
That's my question too. I'm actually looking over to my colleagues. They say 20 years is the usable life of a solar panel. Thank you.
Okay. No idea.
I have one.
Go ahead.
I mean, so we can't turn people off if they don't pay their water bill, regardless of their financial status.
Yeah, correct.
Can we change their delivery?
Customers delivery?
Yes. In other words, can you reduce their pressure or the flow or the maximum flow? I mean, so that I would think the objective of such a thing would be to make sure that they have got all their sanitary needs met, but they might not be able to water a lawn. Is that legal?
I would probably have to check in with our council on that, but I do know, and I'll just acknowledge that there has been water districts that have used a method to essentially put in essentially a disc into the meter where it constrains water use to basically just indoor water use. And that's been more used in the context of water conservation, and that was employed down south with a district down south. Now, I'm looking at our legal counsel here to see what his wisdom is with respect to legality.
I'm not aware of it from a water perspective, but I am aware of it from an electric perspective, that they do put limiting devices on it. So if you're on some sort of medical equipment that needs some power, you can get a doctor's note in that sense to keep a limited supply of power coming. But I'm not aware of putting a limiting device on water and have not heard of it myself.
Well, yeah, so an orifice can limit you down to where effectively you can't run a sprinkler system, but you can fill pots and pans, you can take a shower, you can fill your toilet, but it's limiting. And if somebody's not paying, I assume that the purpose of the legislation is to make sure that we don't have people who don't have water supply, no water to drink for health and safety purposes. So you could orifice their line so that they had health and safety water, but not a lot of discretion beyond that.
Yeah, it is possible and has been done. But you also have to obviously evaluate other aspects too, which we would have to certainly look at if that was an option we'd want to explore.
I was just thinking if we begin to get widespread abuse of this, I'm wondering why I pay my water bill. Nobody's required anymore.
Yeah. It's not a good precedent.
Yeah, good person.
If we did end up making a change like that, that would be a change in our municipal code, and that would go before our city council, and I would imagine that we would bring that before the Public Utilities Commission for a recommendation before we would take that to city council if it were ever to get that far. But again, I have not heard of that being something on anybody's tip of their tongue at this point.
Right.
Yep. It's a great question, though.
Do we have any kind of a problem with this currently?
So during the pandemic, we did have accounts that did come past due. We did see a spike in that activity. I don't have the numbers off the top of my head. I will say most recently, as post-pandemic, as things have kind of gotten much more normal, the level that we have in terms of past due accounts is not that significant. It's not that widespread with respect to Roseville. And I think that probably speaks to the demographics of the community. Probably reasonable to say it's probably more of a problem in other areas, maybe disadvantaged communities, places like that. But it's not a significant issue here in Roseville. We don't have a lot of past due accounts.
Thank you, Sean.
Yeah.
Our utility bill's bundled. So how would you, I've lived in places where there was a little tiny water district, a small community, we had a separate water bill. But here in Roseville, it's our electric, water, sewer, everything, garbage is all bundled. So how would you even go about not paying your water bill? It would be your total utility bill, right?
Yeah, it would present as a person paying the utility bill, it would certainly present a problem. I think on multiple fronts, not just I don't think you can definitely not parse out just your water bill per se. It is a combined bill, and paying half of it or choosing to pay a portion of it probably could be problematic, I would think. I won't speak for Roseville Electric in terms of how they would deal with a situation like that, but I know that there would be implications if a customer decided not to pay that portion. There's some linkages there that could create an issue from a customer standpoint.
And I can weigh in on a little bit of that as well, is we've had customers sometimes pay a bill under protest in that sort of exact situation of like, I'm protesting your rate increase for electric, and so this is only payment for water, sewer, garbage, and we've had to explain it doesn't necessarily work that way. Right.
I had a question. What is a covered solar panel?
It's a regular solar panel that you see on houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Are there any questions from the public that would like to come up and address us at this time? Not seeing anyone from the public, I want to say thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Our next item is coming from the Roseville Electric Utility. This is our monthly update. Tonight's report is by the Chief Executive Officer, Dan Beans, summarizing the monthly status of our electric utility activities. Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair Webb and Commissioners. I'm Dan Bean, CEO of Roseville Electric, and just got a brief, very, very brief update on 4 items, and then take any questions. So first off, our integrated resource plan, which is our plan, just an outline, a guide on how we are going to procure energy, what kind of energy, when we need it over the next, in this case, we're looking at 10 to 12 years. And so we expect to get that finished up into council before the end of the year is the plan. So I've also talked about our strategic plan. We've been working on that for several months. I intended to have that to council to the commission before the end of the year, but at this point, we're going to be spilling into next year. So first quarter next year, hopefully around there, we'll get it to you and then to the council. I think I've mentioned before, Roseville has been selected to host the 2025 National Line Workers Rodeo, and so staff is working with the grounds and others to get this event planned. It's going to be really great, bringing in hundreds, if not thousands, of people to Roseville to come and do line rodeo work. It'll really be fun. So, one last item. On October 11th, we did have a forced outage at the Roseville Energy Park. We had a drive that runs a small motor, or it's a pony motor. It's not that small, but that motor is used to spin the turbine up, one of the big turbines up, and it had an electrical fault, caused a fire, and so piece of equipment burned up. We had help from fire department and police department to help us manage that situation. No one was hurt, but one of the big units is down, so we're looking at a few weeks to a few months to repair it. We're looking at a couple different options, so we'll be working on that as quickly as we can. At least this time of year, we don't have a huge demand, so we normally go into a maintenance mode in February anyway, but we still need to get that unit back up, so I'll take any questions.
Do commissioners have questions for, at this time? Is there anyone from the public who would like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing any public comment or questions. Thank you for the updates. Our next item on our agenda is the Roseville Electric Utility Legislative and Regulatory Update. Tonight's presentation is by our Legislative and Regulatory Manager, Amber Blixt, and she's providing the year-end overview of priority energy-related legislation and regulatory issues addressed in 2023. So welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chair Webb and Commissioners. I am Amber Blix with Roseville Electric, and I wanted to start by giving an overview of our legislative and regulatory advocacy efforts, which are a priority for the department and the city. We have an annual legislative platform that we develop to guide our advocacy efforts each year, and this year we had over 150 state and federal bills that were tracked by the electric department. We have dedicated resource staff and lobbyists to ensure that our business interests are covered in state and federal venues. And we work closely with our trade associations to shape legislation. And they include the California Municipal Utilities Association, or CMUA, the Northern California Power Agency, NCPA, and at the federal level, the American Public Power Association, or APPA. I want to address a couple pieces of state legislation. The first is AB 1373 by Assemblymember Garcia. This was one of the largest pieces of energy legislation that went through the state this year, and it has three primary components. First, it authorizes the Department of Water Resources to act as a central procurement entity for diverse clean energy resources. POU participation in the central procurement entity is voluntary. Second, the bill requires a report to the legislature regarding whether individual publicly owned utilities meet their minimum planning reserve margin for 2023 and other resource adequacy requirements as established in a recent California Public Utilities Commission decision. And this component of the legislation was concerning to us because we are not under the jurisdiction of the California Public Utilities Commission, or CPUC, and we are not tracking decisions from the CPUC that previously did not apply to us. The third component of the bill is for publicly owned utilities that are in the California Independent System Operator, and this would assess a capacity payment on those POUs that did not meet their minimum planning reserve margin in the same month that the state's strategic reliability reserve is activated. This part of the bill does not apply to Roseville because we are located in the balancing authority of Northern California, not the California Independent System Operator. The governor ultimately signed this bill into law, and we plan to track the implementation details of this legislation as the regulatory processes begin to address the issues of this bill. The next state bill is AB 1594, and this is a bill that we supported that was introduced collaboratively by our trade associations to address ongoing concerns with the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule through the California Air Resources Board. And the Advanced Clean Fleets Rule, or ACF, requires 50% of medium and heavy-duty vehicles to be zero-emission vehicles beginning in 2024 and 100% beginning in 2027. AB 1594 makes accessing existing accommodation or exemptions in the ACF rule more appropriate. Specifically, it eliminates the requirement for vehicles to be 13 years or older before being considered for an exemption, and it will allow us to use comprehensive usage data when applying for an exemption rather than excluding our vehicle's highest usage days. We really view this bill as ensuring that our vehicles can continue to provide reliable service, emergency response, and mutual aid. In coordination with the Environmental Utilities Department, we supported this bill throughout the legislative process, and we also submitted a signature request to the governor, and the bill was ultimately signed into law. So we view that as a very positive outcome. On the federal side of things, we have Senate Bill 2036 and House Bill 4167 that are nearly identical bills that we have supported, and these relate to Protecting America's Distribution Transformer Supply Chain Act. These two bills would prohibit the Department of Energy from issuing revised energy efficiency rules for distribution transformers for at least 5 years. In December of 2022, the DOE proposed revised efficiency standards that would further complicate supply chain issues for distribution transformers. The Electric Department continues to raise major concerns over the impacts of increasing these efficiency standards and changing out production for distribution transformers during an already complicated supply chain crisis. We have met with leaders in Washington, D.C., and have been involved in extensive outreach related to these supply chain issues. Despite our ongoing advocacy, the Department of Energy has not yet revised their proposed rule, but we are continuing to advocate on this topic. In the state regulatory realm with the California Energy Commission, there are a couple of items that I wanted to bring to the commission. The first is the California Energy Commission recently approved their Distributed Electricity Backup Assets Program guidelines, and this program is seeking energy resources to serve as on-call emergency supply or load reduction for the state's electrical grid during extreme events. 25% of the funding is available to projects in publicly owned utility territories through grant funding opportunities or GFOs. Eligible projects include efficiency upgrades, maintenance and capacity additions to existing power generators, and new or zero emission technologies at new or existing facilities. Our comments to date have focused on the timing of the application to ensure that publicly owned utilities have ample time to apply, and on providing funding earlier in the development process. So currently, the CEC is targeting a December application timeline for the first round of applicants that are interested, but there could be additional opportunities to apply. So this is a process that the Electric Department is following. Under the other state regulatory items at the California Energy Commission, there is SB 1158 implementation. And SB 1158 is a bill that passed last year by Senator Becker and is now in the early stages of regulatory development. The requirement is for annual reporting of hourly electricity and the associated greenhouse gas emissions used to serve our load. While the reporting requirement doesn't kick in until 2028, given the complex data and intensive nature of this requirement, the CEC is beginning their regulatory process now, and they will complete their process by July of 2024. After the conclusion of the regulatory process, we'll have a few years to prepare for collecting data and figuring out how we're going to meet the requirements. So we are tracking this process now through the CEC with our trade associations. But as I mentioned, this is in the very beginning stages of development. On the California Air Resources Board front, we have a cap and trade program update before us. And since the 2012 adoption of the cap and trade program, California has accelerated many of its existing clean energy policies, including the Renewable Portfolio Standard Program, or RPS, as I'm sure you guys have heard it referenced before. In response to these accelerated goals, CARB is considering tightening the number of allowances available in the cap and trade program to meet increasing GHG emission reduction targets. These changes may impact allowances dedicated to POUs, publicly owned utilities, in the future. Also under discussion is whether POU allowance value uses should be more defined with a greater focus on equity and transparency. The implementation timeline for this program update is unclear, but could be as early as 2025. Roseville has worked with our trade associations to provide comments to CARB with a focus on preventing the reduction of utility allowances in the future and to maintain allowance value to support climate emission reduction programs that benefit our communities. We will continue to follow ongoing changes to the cap and trade program and engage as appropriate. And then the final regulatory item that I wanted to talk about this evening was at the California Independent System Operator, or CAISO, and that is their Extended Day-Ahead Market, EDAM. EDAM is a voluntary day-ahead electricity market designed to expand upon the successes of the real-time energy imbalance market that Roseville joined in 2021. EDAM is expected to result in additional benefits, lower emissions, and decreased power costs. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, is considering EDAM approval now. And Roseville recently participated in a meaningful CAISO stakeholder forum as part of our efforts to examine participation in EDAM. At this forum, the Balancing Authority of Northern California, which we belong to, and the Sacramento Municipal Utility District, SMUD, announced their intent to participate in EDAM in the 2026 timeframe. Roseville is continuing to assess participation in EDAM and expects to make a recommendation regarding EDAM participation in the months to come. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the Commission may have on my update.
So could you describe what EDAM is? I mean, I'm familiar with the real-time market wholesale, the auction that CAISO runs.
Yeah, so I could just give a quick overview. So I think, we're participating currently now in the Western Energy Imbalance Market, which is a real-time energy market to help with supply and to help. It's a real-time energy market versus the EDAM, which is a day-ahead electricity market. So there's more forecasting involved rather than just the real-time energy. It's to get an opportunity to reduce power costs and share resources across a broader footprint. Dan may have.
So everyone in CAISO, which we're not, they all the generators submit. They run the auction the day ahead, and they assign. So that's. We would be participating in that.
This would be open to a broader market. That's their goal, is to get like Pacific Northwest and other people to bid into it. And so instead of just doing the energy imbalance every 5 minutes computerized, they're looking at doing it 24 hours in advance and provide more stability and more diversity of portfolio. So it's still, it'd be voluntary versus if you're in the ISO, you have to bid in and do all that. So this is for other people to also participate. It's like a baby step toward like a regional transmission organization kind of concept.
So I'm using my crazy stock market analogies. Is it like stock trading where you lock in the price the day ahead? You put in a limit, like if I were buying something, I'll limit it to, say, $20. Is that the analogy or not really?
You're getting kind of into the weeds on that.
Okay.
We do have really, really expert people who aren't with us right now on this particular subject. But as far as strike prices and all that kind of thing, I mean, that stuff can happen in a bilateral market as well. So we do have a contract with a company that does our trading for us and implements our policies and hedges and all that. So some of that stuff's happening all the time, but the EDAM is supposed to be a little more automated, a little more consistent, and like I said, broader to bring in more resources from other states is their goal.
Would this increase loading, increase wear and tear on equipment?
That is, it could increase more starts and stops on equipment. So yeah, that is part of the math that has to be done. That's also true with the EIM, yeah.
You had a question?
So the wholesale electric market, the day-ahead market that CAISO runs, during periods of the year, you get really low prices in the middle of the day when there's a lot of solar, and you get really high prices in the afternoon when gas has to take over for solar. And so for the city, the opportunity is to, I assume, but I'm trying to make it a question, is to buy that cheap energy in the middle of the day and then sell our surplus energy in the afternoon for more than it costs us to generate, and buy when it's cheaper than it costs us to generate. And so I would think that there was a huge opportunity for an organization that has surplus capacity currently.
Yes, if you're long, you definitely have more opportunity, but it really depends on what resource you're long in, how efficient it is, what, say if it's a gas plant, what is your gas that you've already purchased for it, what cost was that when you got it. So, but we have our firm that is constantly optimizing our resources with that in mind. I mean, that happens today. So we look at the market, and we know we know how efficient our plant is. We know how much the gas is that we've already purchased. And so if it's cheaper to buy energy on the market, we buy the energy, sell the gas, arbitrage that. And so it's quite a process. I don't want to talk too much about it because then you'll figure out how much I don't know about it. But it's quite a process, and we have very highly technical people that work on this.
And my point is, I would think that there's a tremendous opportunity for the citizens of Roseville to benefit from this participation.
Yeah, the EIM has brought a lot of benefit. I believe the EDAM, it really depends on some of the details. They're still working out what the tariff looks like. As you know, some of those things can really marginalize, how much benefit. But generally, having more diversity in the resource mix and more access to other markets and other parties to transact with is usually better. So we're waiting to see what the studies all show, and of course they're just studies. But if it looks promising, we will bring a recommendation to join along with SMUD and the rest of the bank members. So.
And I would just add that we have a lot of upcoming regulatory requirements in the power sector, and so this is one of the tools that we can use to potentially meet some of those requirements in the future. And I think we all are of the position that we're going to need all the tools that are in the toolbox to reach those goals. So this is one of a potential tool that we're looking at.
Yes, we're very much an advocate of all of the above options to meet the goals of the state. We need everything. So.
Are there any other questions? Is there anyone from the public who'd like to come forward and address the commission on this item? Not seeing anyone from the public. I want to say thank you so much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Next on our agenda is the board member and commissioners' staff reports. Are there any reports from staff? Are there any reports or questions or comments from the commission? All right, not seeing that. Does anyone have any items they would like to suggest for future meetings? All right, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.